Hi there, I'm Jim Willis, and I'm an interpersonal communication specialist. I'm here today to address, certainly not all, but in a general sense, people that are considered to be part of the Gen X generation. More specifically, I've designed this presentation to guide the Gen X populace in overcoming barriers when communicating to people who identify with non traditional gender identities and their use of pronouns to describe themselves. Backed by my comprehensive studies attending not less than 4 classes led by Seneca legend Phil Edwards, and a few chapters I skimmed through from the textbook Everyday Encounters and Introduction to Interpersonal Communications, I am pleased to lend my expertise to you Gen Xers out there having difficulties navigating the 50 plus genders that trans and non-binary people may be identifying as. Remember, you're not alone. I myself am a Gen Xer. And I once faced many of the same barriers that so many of you, my peers, may be currently struggling with. Now, before we get into the steps and strategies to help guide you on how to overcome gender ignorance, let's take a look at this short video response. We asked a Gen Xer, how do you feel about transgender, non-binary, and the use of pronouns? Let's see what they had to say.
Okay, so seriously, that's the question. How do I feel about transgender, non-binary, and the use of pronouns? Okay. Hi, I'm Jim. I'm a male. I'm 40 years old, part of the Gen X generation. And how do I feel about transgender and non-binary? Well, I feel that like when I was growing up, the world was a simpler place, and we knew beyond a doubt that there are only two sexes. There's only male. There's only female, man and woman. I knew that we knew that if you're born with a penis, you're a man. If you're born with a vagina, you're a female. Sometimes people are unlucky and born with both sexual organs. I think we call them hermaphrodites. You know, there's none of this that's going on today where men are so confused. They think they're women. Women are so confused. They think they're men. Really, they don't know who they are. They're mutilating their bodies, having these expensive surgeries and taking hormones to defile God's creation because they're so uncertain about who they are. I think that people don't appreciate God's creation, and I think the devil's at work, and they just want to, and he wants to just, just defile God's perfect creation. And I think society is just promoting this. I think society is to blame. I think there's an agenda. I think people use the use of pronouns is getting out of hand. I think there's only two genders. You know, this 50 plus genders thing is ridiculous. I think that's mental illness. I think asking me to address you, a single person, as they and them is selfish, and I don't really feel comfortable taking part in that delusional thinking. It's not fair to the general public who is now being asked to deceive themselves and go against what they see with their own eyes. I think it's just become too complicated, and we need to address mental illness at its root.
As you have just seen, I once had a very opinionated view when it came to the trans and non binary community and their use of pronouns. In my research, I found that this may be the case for a large number of Gen Xers. John Scalzi from whatever.scalzi.com has said this. And while one does not have to be in one's mid 40s to mid 50s to have this essentialism as part of one's worldview, I certainly noticed it the most in that group of people in Gen Xers, that slice of the population curve that I'm part of. There are Gen Xers who I otherwise find myself in alignment with in terms of issues of the rights of women, with gays and lesbians, and with people of color, but that have a sharp break on matter of the rights of and identities of trans people. He furthermore states, I think it's possible that in very general terms, every group identified as a generation has a group that it, for whatever reason, still sees as an other in some significant way. And for Gen X people, it's trans people. So then, what are some of the reasons for this worldview that Generation Xers might be holding? One reason is that
Trans jokes and cultural othering were still acceptable in the media Gen Xers grew up with. The plot of Ace Ventura, Pet Detective of all movies, hinged on it. The Crying Game relied on its protagonist being surprised at someone's trans identity. And there was the reoccurring gag of Chandler's dad being played by Kathleen Turner, who was a trans woman in the show. It may be uncomfortable and difficult, even threatening, for Gen Xers to accept that a worldview they grew up with, the only one they knew, may be incorrect or inappropriate. Ruby, a non binary teen, tells Parents.com magazine that when you come out as non binary or transgender to the adults in your life, the adults have to do a lot of internal work to understand how they fit into the world again. Because when you shatter someone's reality like that, something they've grown up with, something they've thought to be fact, they also have to really question how the world works and their own place in it. So let's now consider some steps and strategies Gen Xers can take to better communicate with transgender, non-binary, and all people, whether in a personal or professional setting. First off, it would benefit Gen Xers to become familiar with the interpersonal needs theory developed by William Schultz in 1966, which asserts that our tendency to create and sustain relationships flows out of three basic needs: affection, inclusion, and control. In 1968, Abraham Maslow expanded on Schutz's ideas with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, proposing that we communicate to meet a range of human needs. I've highlighted here some of the most important human needs we as Gen Xers need to keep in mind when communicating with transgender and non-binary people. That being safety needs, the need for protection, security, and stability, the need of belongingness, the need to have family, friends, love, and relationships, esteem needs, remembering that all people need to feel a sense of achievement, status, and self-respect, self-actualization. All people need a sense of personal growth and transcendence. That need for helping others to self-actualize. Which brings us to the use of pronouns such as they and them, and why it's important to recognize and acknowledge a person's request to be identified as such. After all, pronouns are how you show respect to people. When you use the correct pronoun for someone, you're acknowledging that you are seeing them the way they want to be seen. Also, Gen Xers, it's important to remember that the worldview you carried throughout your life may no longer serve you well in today's ever-evolving society. To assume a person's gender identity based on appearance alone is no longer an accepted norm. You may offend someone. In order to facilitate a better relationship with others, do not be afraid to ask questions. Gender can be complex, and people are defining themselves in new and different ways as we gain a deeper understanding of identities. Some terms may mean different things to different people. There are certain terms some folks may not like to use or call themselves, and some terms that they may like to use or call themselves. If you're not sure what to call a person, it's best to ask the person what they would like to be called. It is always up to us to decide how we identify and how we express our gender. However you decide or identify deserves to be respected and supported. Lastly, Gen Xers, no matter how you feel about the binary world that you grew up in or the non-binary world of today, it's important to keep your emotional intelligence at check at all times. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize your feelings, to judge which feelings are appropriate in which situations, and to commune those feelings effectively. Because when communicating with other people, the receiver of the communication, their feelings are just as valid as the feelings of those of the sender of the communication. And in closing, I will leave you with this. Why is interpersonal communication so important? Interpersonal communication is considered an important aspect in building strong relationships in work, family, and other places. It helps in solving problems between people. Interpersonal communication has been defined as the process of exchange of information, feelings, and ideas between two or more people through verbal and nonverbal methods.
It's important to remember, Gen Xers, that this world is a big place. It's not always easy, and we're all trying to carve our way in it. We all want to feel included in this world. We all have feelings and emotions. We all have needs that need to be met. And to make that possible, it's important that we learn to communicate with each other, to respect each other's ideas and opinions, and to share our own as well. It's also important to remember that while we are respecting other people's opinions and views, our opinions and views are also equally as important. But we need to know when it is appropriate to share those views. Let's try to make this world a better place for everyone.